Every time your child avoids what scares them, they feel instant relief. And that relief is exactly the problem. Boom! Right out of the gate, we're tackling a massive paradigm shift today in how we understand and actually handle anxiety in kids. Welcome to The Explainer.
I want you to really let that sink in for a second, because it completely shatters conventional wisdom, doesn't it? I mean, our deepest, most hardwired instinct when we see a kid in distress is to jump in and rescue them. We pull them away from the barking dog, or, we let them skip that scary social event. But here's the thing. The science is showing us that this well-intentioned rescue mission, it's actually backfiring on us.
See, we usually think of avoidance as this harmless coping mechanism, right? Like it's just a symptom. We figure they're avoiding the thing simply because they're scared. Makes complete sense. But clinical research paints a totally different picture. It turns out, avoidance acts as the active fuel of fear. It's literally the engine keeping that anxiety alive and growing. So that short-term relief you're giving them, it's being purchased at the steep cost of compounding their long-term fear.
Part 1. The mechanism, the science of avoidance.
Let's dig into decades of learning science. They reveal this incredibly sticky, powerful habit loop, and it's driven by something called negative reinforcement. Now, quick aside, in behavioral science, negative doesn't actually mean bad. It just means taking something away. When a child avoids a feared situation, say putting their hand down in class instead of raising it, their anxiety suddenly plummets. That massive rush of relief feels incredibly rewarding to the brain, and that reward practically guarantees they're going to avoid that exact same situation the very next time.
And this brings us to the hidden, really insidious cost of that negative reinforcement. Avoidance blocks corrective learning. Because the child escapes the situation early, they never actually stick around long enough to discover the truth, right? They never learn that the awful thing they expected, like everyone laughing at them or the dog biting them, doesn't actually happen. Their fearful belief is never disconfirmed. Instead, their brain just logs the event as, hey, we ran away and we survived. Therefore, running away saved us. So the fear is just perfectly preserved in amber.
Now you might be sitting there thinking, well, my kid doesn't totally run away. They just need a little help to get through it. But watch out, because these are what we call safety behaviors, or subtle avoidance. This is stuff like facing the fear, but only while clinging to your leg, or gripping a lucky teddy bear like it's a life raft. And research shows these subtle crutches, they act exactly the same way as total avoidance. The child's brain just attributes their survival to the crutch. It actually thinks, I only survived that birthday party because I held mom's hand the entire time.
Which brings us to the absolute central thesis of this explainer. I really want you to burn this phrase into your memory. Avoidance isn't the symptom of fear. It is the fuel. It's the active ingredient that takes a temporary, totally normal childhood worry and crystallizes it into a persistent, clinical-level anxiety disorder. Simply trying to calm a kid down with deep breathing or logical reassurance, it just isn't going to cut it if that behavioral habit of avoidance is still there. Because as long as the avoidance continues, you're basically pouring gasoline on the fire.
So, what does this all mean for us? How do we break the cycle? If comforting them by removing the thread is essentially pouring gas on the fire, what exactly is the water? How do we rewire a brain that's caught in this incredibly powerful loop of negative reinforcement?
Part 2. How exposure breaks the cycle.
Enter exposure therapy. This is the gold standard for neutralizing that fuel, and it works through a biological mechanism called new inhibitory learning, which is just a scientific term for fear-extinction. Now, if you tuned in to our previous explainer, episode 86, you'll definitely remember this concept. We used to think getting over a fear meant erasing the old fear memory, but modern neuroscience tells us, nope, that's not true. The old fear memory, it stays right there. Instead, exposure builds a brand new, competing memory. Hey, this is actually safe memory. And when this new safe memory gets stronger than the old fearful one, it literally inhibits or blocks the fear response.
Part 3. Maximizing expectancy violation.
Now, if you've heard of exposure therapy before, you really need to know that the model has completely changed. Back in the day, the old goal was habituation, basically just waiting around in the scary situation until the anxiety naturally dropped. But modern exposure, it is a whole different ballgame. It's all about maximizing expectancy violation. We deliberately test the child's scary prediction to create this massive gap between what they expected to happen and what actually happened. That profound feeling of surprise, like, whoa, that dog didn't bite me after all, that is the exact chemical trigger the brain needs to update its hardware.
Let's actually walk through the exact steps of how this hardware update works in real time. First up, step 1, anticipating the fear. The child predicts an absolute catastrophe. Then, step 2, encountering the trigger. They face the feared object, but crucially, without running away and without any of those sneaky safety behaviors. Step 3, experiencing a mismatch. The catastrophe doesn't happen. The brain goes, wait, what? I'm safe? It's completely surprised. And finally, step 4, forming a new safe memory. Because the avoidance was successfully blocked, the brain finally receives the hard biological data it needs to realize, oh, I actually am safe.
And I just want to pause right here for a second to reassure you, because this is absolutely crucial. This isn't just theoretical stuff, and it's definitely not just based on, rodent models in a lab. The pediatric evidence for these exact fear and avoidance learning processes is incredibly direct and robust. Top researchers confirm that this exact same avoidance maintains fear logic applies directly to clinical anxiety in children. This right here is exactly why exposure-based cognitive behavioral therapy is the undeniable frontline treatment. It is deeply rooted in the fundamental biology of how human children learn to be safe.
Part 4. Winning bets against avoidance.
So once you truly understand that avoidance is the fuel, guess what? You hold the power to stop providing it. This clinical science translates directly into actionable empowerment for every single parent, teacher, and caregiver out there. It perfectly captures the core engine of the whole Fear Me Not approach. Every brave mission is a small, winnable bet against avoidance that teaches the brain a new truth. You don't have to tackle the biggest fear all at once. No way. You just have to design small, manageable exposures, brave missions, that violate the brain's scary expectations without allowing the child to avoid. So I'm going to leave you with this one provocative question to chew on. What small, winnable bet will you help your child make today to teach their brain a brand new truth? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Dive into the Fear Me Not approach, start testing those scary predictions, and I will see you in the next one.